When I started researching possibly serving on city council, I had a number of meetings with a number of individuals, and including Aram and others. I did a fair amount of research. And in the intervening year and a half, technology has changed, markets have changed, information has changed. When my colleagues on this board made the decision that Drake should be closed no later than 2035, things were very different then. And so I've had a lot of discussion with folks before and then since serving on this board. And for me, we have to continually look at what the current markets are and what the current situation is. There was a time when Drake was a wonderful boon to this city. It no longer is. It costs more to operate than we could buy energy on the spot market. I had said when I ran that I wanted to get Drake closed earlier than the 2035, and I was thinking maybe like 2030, maybe late 2020s. But I think that both of the primary portfolios are correct, that it is appropriate to close it significantly sooner than this board had said before I joined it. And so I support closing Drake by 2023. Having said that, both 16 and 17 do that. In the short term, 17 is cheaper for our ratepayers. In the long term, it's dealing with some speculative things with respect to the availability of wind energy, batteries, and on a whole host of other things. But there is time to reevaluate that as we go forward. And so I believe that looking at things in the short term, that 17 is better. I think it's a great aspirational process with respect to what we go forward with. I would like, and I talked to Aram about this, just as part of a motion to approve 17, which I am prepared to make, to add that we will continually reevaluate where we are and what makes sense going forward. Because although we do an EIRP regularly, it's not been 5 years since I got the information that said keeping Drake open is the way to go for a while. And things have changed. And I think this board needs to be nimble to adjust that. I think that's what our ratepayers expect. I believe that 17 is the best at doing this, and that's why I support 17 with that caveat that we continually look at where we are. I think that board does that anyways, but I'd like it formal as part of the recommendation for that adoption. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Wayne. I have a couple people on chat requesting to speak. I think the first is Richard. Richard, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. And I if we're getting to that point, I would wholeheartedly second that motion, Wayne, and really appreciate your bringing it up. But I just think that there is several things that that spell 17 is really the best, and we all have heard the comments from the public, but I want to go into what I have talked about before, and I think natural gas is going to be a really risky fuel in the future, and it is something that if we're talking about stability and reliability and how we move forward as a community, we need to really have all the other options on the table besides natural gas. And I know we don't have that regulatory climate right at the moment, but over the next decade or two, it's absolutely going to be there. And I think that we are taking a much bigger risk by having to build a gas-fired plant and leaving a stranded asset. I mean, we made that mistake with the Newman scrubbers. And look where we are today. You know, we were trying to figure out how to amortize that and to have that be a useful investment that we made a decision long ago that we shouldn't have. And I just want to go back to what some of the callers were talking about. The economic development benefits of 17 are huge. To have a city that gets 300 days of sunshine, that has a lot of wind, that has as its number one driver for the economy and the quality of life our mountain backdrop and our outdoor recreation, to move forward with renewable energy in a way that 17 allows us to do, and to be aspirational. And thank you, staff and Aram, for everybody for being willing to do this, is going to make a huge difference in who's going to live here in the future. We've created a city that in so many ways is one of the best in the country. This decision will bring us even more in that direction. And I just can't say enough how much I support 17. The other part that I think is so valuable is the DSM, and 70 megawatts is great. I wish it could be more. And this allows for that option. And because that's the cleanest, most renewable, the best energy for everybody is not having to use energy at all. We are a city that's considered to be conservative, and I brought this up many times. That conservatism is also being thrifty. And being thrifty is having as many people buy in and to be as aggressive as we can to help them use less energy. So we move forward as a city that is going to be as clean as possible. So I think this is a historic moment. The Drake decision is unbelievably historic. We have this decision in front of us today that I never thought we would get to the time I was on council. This is a time for huge celebration, and thank you, staff and UPAC and everybody for putting this together. We are creating history today.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate those words. Bill is next. Are you there, Bill?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I've often spoken to everyone about the three issues that we fail to address. We constantly talk cost benefit, but a lot of times we don't talk about cost benefit and consequence. And with that in mind, I mean, what are the consequences of what we're doing? I initially supported 16 very specifically because the number one goal for me across the entire spectrum is reliability of the system. Seriously, I don't think any of us care what it would cost. I mean, we care. But the point being, if I flip the light switch on and the power doesn't come on, it doesn't exist. So while I was looking at 16, someone made a comment to me about scanning the future for risks and taking proper note of what we see as a mark of prudent maturity. And hindsight is rarely 100%. And I was looking back at the Newman decision. And I was looking forward at the availability of gas and the future of gas availability throughout an entire spectrum. And the more I looked at it, the more I decided that the gasification plant, as suggested in 16, might be a Newman decision. And it could be ultimately the albatross that brought us back to where we are in trying to adjudicate the future. It's all about the future. Okay, that's what we're really here, is to discern and help build the future of this utility process. So based on that, 17, I believe, is the way to go, and I'm fully endorsing 17. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Don or Dave? Dave?
I'm going to try to keep this somewhat in order because I have my own thoughts and I've been listening to the people and other board members, staff, and And so if it gets a little chaotic and out of control, just think about it like a Thanksgiving dinner conversation, and I'll be the crazy uncle who drank
Let's
too
keep that
much.
Thanksgiving
Yes.
analogy going.
I want to put a few things in perspective here, and I think one thing that we missed today is that the reference case, the status quo, what we have done for the last 10, 15, 20 years, and the assumptions we made for the last 10, 15, 20 years has changed, not just because of economics and technology, but because of law. We are required to change. The regulations and the laws make it very, very clear that we cannot go on the path that we are still going on. And so the assumption is we have to change. And so while there is this, there has been this expression by some in emails, and yes, Melody, I did read your email, but with everything that's been going on, we're getting hundreds of emails a day, and I apologize for crickets, but you are not the only one who's getting crickets at this point in time, and I apologize for that. We have to look at what we're going to change to. So with that as the premise, UPAC has done a wonderful job, the staff has done a wonderful job in looking at what we are going to change to and what does the future look like. And that's where I am starting my conversation from, is recognizing we do need to change. And so what does the future look like, and where do we go from here? In that regard, in responding to some of the various things, the Newman Scrubbers was the right decision. I have no doubt the Newman Scrubbers was the right decision at that time, in the status quo, and what related at that point in time. The board made a decision to proceed with the Newman Scrubbers. But the fact that that may have been the right decision back then doesn't mean that it is the right decision to continue to hold on to today. Flexibility is necessary, movement is necessary. People have talked about learning, evolving, and growing. And we are now at a point where that decision is now made obsolete by the emergence of things, as Mr. Williams talked about. What has changed for him in the last year and a half, what has changed for me in the last 4 years, these are areas that we just didn't anticipate. I would ask the people who are critical today, justifiably critical, worried about Portfolio 16, to put themselves back 3 years ago and to consider what their reaction would have been 3 years ago if at that point in time we were saying Portfolio 16 is what we were considering. Their reaction would have been incredibly positive. It is a reflection of those changes that we're talking about, the emerging technologies, the changing economies, that now they're saying that's not far enough. That 17 is where we need to go, even though 3 years ago, I think people would have said 16 is awesome and that that's what we're looking for. With all that in mind, there are 5 factors that are driving me towards supporting Portfolio 17 and Mr. Williams' motion. The out-of-pocket cost estimates, even long-term, are negligible. They relate to 0.5%, slightly over 0.5%. Rate is disproportionate because of the aspirational nature of this. It is the internal deal of, okay, what are we going to do to incorporate wind? There are difficulties. What are we going to do to make sure transmission is there? What are we going to do for DSM and those sorts of things? But the actual out-of-pocket cost to ratepayers over the course of this is approximately 0.5%. And that is an estimate. And we can't predict what the estimate's going to be. So from a rate standpoint, they are the same. For the future, I think it's really important to recognize we are not looking at what CSU is going to do today for the current ratepayers. What we're looking at is how is CSU going to evolve and grow over the next 10 years in anticipation of the next several decades. In that regard, I think it's really important to look at the survey results as they relate to the age realities of the various people who came in. Our citizens who are currently younger are saying Portfolio 17 is what they want by a huge percentage. Our future ratepayers are saying that Portfolio 17 is what they want by a huge percentage. And that's who we're talking about. We are talking about what are we going to be giving the citizen ratepayers 10 years from now. This is what those ratepayers are asking for. Fundamentally, reliability was the most important consideration for everybody by a huge percentage. In what is the most reliable portfolio? Portfolio 17. Short-term and long-term. The most important thing for our customers, for the military, for the city, for the board, is achieved through Portfolio 17. And decommissioning Drake, I'll get to that one in a second. And the fourth item, which is the last item, is really, we've all talked about this over the last year and a half, and it was prefaced by the question I gave, is we're trying to anticipate what the future holds. What will be the regulatory landscape? What will be the changes to the regulatory landscape? What are the economics going to be? What is going to be the availability of gas? Is there going to be gas disruption? What can we do to participate in the Joint Transmission Organization and things like that? And we're all guessing. And what we've seen over the last 3 years is those guesses are changing when the reality emerges. And in that regard, we need to have this built-in flexibility, which frankly is an overarching thing to decreasing the carbon footprint, reliability, environment, cost, and innovation, all the things that we said are important. As we move forward, flexibility in that is necessary. And flexibility has proved necessary over the last several years when we changed what we decided 10 years ago because of those sorts of changes. Aram and the staff have explained quite well how 17 allows the flexibility if we need to go back to gas in 16 if in fact our hopes and opportunities are not realized. But the obverse, the converse is not true. To go from 16 to 17 will be expensive and will not allow that kind of flexibility. So those are the reasons why I'm supporting 17. The one thing that I would say to citizens who are listening is both 16 and 17 allow for the decommission of Drake soon. But decommissioning doesn't mean that Drake as an asset will not be utilized in the transition. Don't expect that in 2023 it will be removed and completely gone. There will be some time afterwards for the transition. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So between John and Andy, which one would like to go next? Andy. You get out.
A lot of people have been talking about the future and we don't know what the future is going to be. I think two things though that are going to happen that we can say with some certainty, a large degree of certainty, is that gas prices are going to go back up and battery technology will finally advance enough to where we can get to Portfolio 10 like Scott Harvey wants us to get to. When does that happen? Who knows? I think gas prices are going to be the first to go up. Battery technology, I don't have that faith in. You know, we just now, as a nation, put astronauts back into space on one of our own rockets instead of relying on the Russians after we retired the shuttle 10 years ago. And it was, it was December of '72 that the last human stepped foot on the moon. Nobody thought it would be almost 50 years later, and we're still not there, and we don't have a path to get there yet. Battery technology, I don't think is gonna be there yet. And 17 relies, for 400 megawatts of battery technology. And we're not getting our first 25 megawatt battery, which will be the largest in the state until 2024. That's where 17 scares me when we talk about reliability. That is what we call the bleeding edge and not the leading edge. And I do disagree with staff that it's easier to fall back from 17 to 16. There's little things called EPA permits and everything else that stand in the way of getting in there. And I do agree with Andy that, the 16 solution doesn't have to be a behemoth single gas plant. We can buy more of these generators, 30 megawatt generators, and hook them up in series. So really, if everything were equal, my vote would be for Portfolio 3. Portfolio 3 does close Drake in 2023, but then it keeps Nixon open until 2050. And until we got the battery technology, the best thing for reliability for our customers is a portfolio that is split between coal, gas, and renewables. And that's the one that's going to make sure that the lights come on when we flip the switch. And more importantly, the heater motor goes on those cold winter nights. But the question today is not about free. But I will make an editorial comment that I was really dismayed with staff on how biased they made their reliability calculations. Ramp up and ramp down has nothing to do with mean time to failure and mean time to repair. And to say that Nixon, that's now been operating for 200 days straight, does not fare well in reliability, I just don't think that's fully accurate. But as to the closure of even Portfolio 3 has Drake closing in 2023. And I will applaud staff on that I think these 30 megawatt gas generators, or whatever they're called in here, is new technology or a breakthrough in technology. I think it is a very positive use and way forward for some issue. And so, as someone that wanted Drake to close after the wheels fall off and then put new coal generators in there, I think this move, because of the advantages that we do need some ramp up, we do need some quick ramp down, and I think that's good. So I'm on board with closing Drake. I'm not on board with closing Nixon until that. But like I said, that's not questions between 16 and 17. 17 is based on wishful thinking that 400 megawatts of battery technology are going to be there. 16 is based on proven technology. There's ways of doing that don't require all the sunk costs that is in there. We can buy some more generators, 30 megawatt generators. Eric Tharp said to me quite a few years ago when I talked about, at that time, replacing Drake with a 400 megawatt plant, a single 400 megawatt plant, because we would need that for not only replacing Drake by growth. He said, or we could do for 100 megawatt plants. So instead of doing one behemoth gasification plant, we can do several ones and do them incrementally, like Andy said. And so for reliability, 16 to me, and as the UPAC said, is the safest way approach until batteries come along, be it in 2030 or before we put a man back on the moon or afterwards.
I also like space analogies, so thank you.
Oh, that reminds me.
Oh, no.
Keeping the theme up.
Uh,
So everybody talks, a lot of stores talk about Christmas in July. That means it's Thanksgiving in June.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Knight, for pulling it all together. Okay, Andy, you're next.
No, I really like the space analogy. I think that's really out of this world. Can you hear me?
Is Andy in the room?
Yeah, he's sitting right
Yeah,
next
I'm
to
right here.
Oh, can you speak a little louder? I want to hear you, Andy.
I can't get the mic any
She wants to
closer.
hear your puns.
I'm not sure, but she really does.
We all do.
Everybody else mute, please. Oh, everybody else mute, please.
But I put together some comments, been writing this up for the last couple of days. And it's just, like Dave said, my comments are somewhat chaotic as they throw together. I want to go through this thing. First of all, I want to say there's a lot of good work and a lot of detailed analysis went into this, and came up with 20, one of those reference cases, right? Compared to the 20 different portfolios, and they ran the numbers. And for the last several weeks now, I've been the heck out of them. And we really have going on.
Everybody, please mute. You're not
Sounded like a fighter plane making a scraping run on.
NASCAR.
Yeah. So we really have done the deep dive with the staff, and we've gone through and we've looked at these numbers tremendously. And I've gone in there from a very skeptical viewpoint on a number of these points. And there's some surprises coming for you. The portfolio options are largely driven by external factors and driven by, which aren't include state regulatory things, but the huge changes in the markets that occur. And we've got some, in some cases, some artificialities in the markets, but the markets are there. And we've got huge changes. What was said earlier was that the Newman system was the right decision to make when it was done. I think we validated some years ago. But not a single one of us were on this board when that decision was made. And we've executed that, and I think we've gotten pretty good use out of it. It made money for us. The markets, again, have changed dramatically. The markets are not the same as what the last EIRP 5 years ago. The markets are not the same for 2 years ago. Huge changes in this, and that has kind of driven an awful lot of what went into the analysis for all of these options, and driven into the analysis and some changes in the future. And as those markets change, we need to change with it. There's a potential case to close the Drayton power plant sooner than we had originally planned. And the issues put in there are to replace units 6 and 7 with what I like to call Drayton units 8 and 14, which are these natural gas generators. That technology wasn't there a few years ago, at least not to what it is. And the big advantage to using those is we can take advantage of the market that we jumped into in the joint dispatch agreement. That market didn't exist until just a few months ago. And we had that discussion a very long time to figure out how we were going to get into that, what it was going to be. And that was a year process to figure out, and we had some starts and stops to get there. When I voted to do that, and when all of us did, I think voted to do that, I expected to see a result. I expected to see that great power plant prove its worth by providing the power going out to when the wind was not blowing and the sun was not shining. The results have been contrary to what I expected to see, and I think we need to see, recognize what the markets have actually come up with. It takes 80 people to run the Drake power plant down there to generate 150 megawatts. And the option we have in front of us is what 6 natural gas generators and a handful of people. And it takes one guy to turn the switch in a remote location. That has changed. I took a long, hard time as of last night, I said the case wasn't closed, but I'm gonna tell you this morning, I think you closed it. It does make sense to replace the coal units with those gas generators, and that's probably gonna be a bit of an earthquake going through some parts of the community out there. Just, but the numbers are there. I mean, you can't argue with what the numbers are. When it takes 80 people to generate 150 megawatts, and you replace that with 2, that changes the numbers. And the numbers, we came in there and we ran those, and I was really highly skeptical of the half a percent. But that's what they are. And so that's getting there. And those generators, what allows us to take that wind for cheap. And that took a long time for me to get this is why that was. But that joint dispatch agreement allows it. But it goes back to a point that I have been making for a very long time. And in reality, all this stuff really doesn't accommodate that. The National Energy Research Lab did a study, and we sent that around to everybody over the last several years, several times. But they documented that it takes 3 times wind and solar and batteries in order to replace what you have online. The Xcel Energy talks about what they're going to do. They're going there, and buried in their brief was the admission that it takes 8 times to overbuild the grid, and that is a huge cost that comes in there. Now we utilities have been taking the advantage of doing a power purchase agreement, so we only pay for power that gets generated as opposed to us building it. That's a smart way to do it. So when the wind blows and the sun shines, there's a lot of excess energy in the grid, and they're giving it away. And we're using the natural gas generators, we can get them. But there is in that also a risk, because that overbuild, someone had to overbuild there, which kind of drives that economy. And there's a risk in that as to when that's not available, whether or not we have sufficient assets to do that. And that goes to the risk of the natural gas markets, and those are pretty highly volatile. The markets now are half of what they were, the price, half what they were just a few years ago. And that, I think, is driving a lot of that, but that also puts risk in there. A lot of people calling for Portfolio 17 are also the same people that want to shut down all the natural gas production, which will drive the prices right out of the road. So there's a risk, however way you do that. And it's a risk that we have to be very mindful of and be very careful of. And I think the issue of incrementally adding natural gas generators makes a lot of sense. It was Eric Tharp who kind of convinced me of that 2 years ago. And now Travis has really laid it out in excruciating detail. And we did. We spent a lot of time. We spent a lot of time showing me how those numbers actually work. And I've got to admit that they did. But when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, there's some really risk. And I'm going to cite what I mentioned before down in Texas, where they have a lot of wind. And when it's not blowing, they were paying up to $9,000 a megawatt to find power wherever it was. That's the kind of risk that I'm very scared of, and what I think Portfolio 17 goes down. So wind and solar vary significantly by the month. So if you build your portfolio based upon how much wind and solar you get in the summertime, you only get half that in the winter, and that drives again to the issue of having to overbuild and the environmental impact of what that costs in wind, solar, the transmission lines, and the batteries back them up. The fact is that those things don't work unless you got a natural gas generator, a high ramp rate to make it up. A couple other quick points. Carbon free is in there. Carbon free is not carbon free. It's using a natural gas generator. They're relying upon the implementation of carbon capture, which is an unproven technology. Going back to the point that Don made, that's the bleeding edge, not the leading edge. And every program I've seen over the years that rely upon that kind of technological innovation on a set schedule and on a set cost fails miserably. And those programs that went on an incremental improvement technology as it was done and as it was implemented will succeed. Usually under budget and ahead of schedule as opposed to the other. So that's a caution. That's one of my concerns about portfolio 17. It really is relying upon innovative technologies on a set time schedule and on a set financial schedule. So again, one of some of the things that both 16 and 17 will do, we are going, if you vote for 17, you're voting to put carbon-based power at the rate and implement units 8 and 14. This board, well, most of us, made the decision some years ago that we would not do that. And we were going to do that. We've also, in this analysis, validated that 100% renewable doesn't work. Those three portfolios and 100% renewable are unaffordable. And so I think hopefully we can lay that canard to rest, that renewable is not cheaper. It most certainly is not. 17 adds and keeps carbon. So if you vote for 17, you're voting to add carbon-based generation. Just bring that out. Also, a lot of people are talking about the pollution. According to CDPHE, 80% of the pollution in the local area is from transportation, not power plants. And that got validated here. We all went into lockdown and we were all getting 3 weeks per gallon in our cars. The air cleared and it was nice and there was no problems out there, and those power plants are running just as much as they were before. So hopefully we can kind of put that into the right perspective. I heard the comment, 300 days of sunshine here. What about the other 65? If you don't mind freezing in the winter, it's okay. DSM. DSM has a lot of potential. Cheapest power is the power that you don't have to generate, and cleans. But it takes a lot of money to get those next couple of increments, and at some point, the cost to get DSM costs more than it goes to generating. And that's a caution that just saying we're going to get a higher percentage of DSM doesn't necessarily pan out. And that's a study we've done several times over the last years. There's a break point. Not sure where that break point is, but it's not indefinite. And the final comment on the survey results. The survey results were kind of looking more at cost, reliability, and all those various factors. 2/3 of the community are rate payers, the people who pay the bills, both residential and commercial, for reliability and cost is their highest factors. They're all important. All of those factors are important, but they all have to be balanced and have to take a careful look. I can't support 17 because of that technological risk, as pointed out by Don. That's where I disagree. I also can't support 16 in part. I don't support any of these. I think even the reference case, because I was kind of alluded to, reference case fails. But 16, I think, falls short because we're talking about that one big giant gas plant. And I said, I kind of like to see a 16 modified, or 16 Bravo, but that's not one of the options we have. So that's where I would go. I'm not going to support 17 because of that technological market risk. But the earthquake out there, the coal plants, unit 6 and 7, because of the manpower cost, because of the cost of maintenance to keep them going for between now and 2030, that cost is equal to the cost of buying these generators. That makes the case. And that's probably going to shock a whole lot of people. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. Tom, you're next, if you can hear me.
Okay, can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Well, good. One of the benefits of going later in the, in the board is a lot has been said and a lot doesn't need to be repeated by me. I do want to start off by saluting Rex Adams and the UPAC board for 14 or 15 months of incredible work and effort. And it has been very important to me, and I'm sure all of the board members, as it is on every project that we hand off to UPAC. And those of you that are watching, I think we had, 20 or 25 people call in. I just received 4 or 5 email in the last 5 minutes from our community. And I would ask our community to consider being members of the utilities board or utilities PAC, as we go forward and when there are any vacancies on that, because it is so critically important to us. And so, Rex, I know you got cut off a little bit. With technology, I had some problems with the RBD yesterday. I'd much rather be there in person, but I make decisions that I think are in the best interest of my health and well-being under these circumstances. So I want to thank UPAC and again salute them on behalf of myself. Over the last month, I have spent a lot of time with Phil and with Michael and with Joe and with Travis. I have done that virtually on the phone, and they have been incredibly helpful to me even up to 2 days ago. I really thought today would be much more difficult. As I was looking at the portfolios, I looked at 12 as a real option, in addition to 16 and 17, which have gotten all the attention and probably well over 100 emails of people talking about these 2 portfolios, with obviously the vast majority of people supporting 17. Much like I think Bill said earlier, I thought this was going to be a much harder decision for me today. And I even talked to a constituent via email yesterday because he asked me what my vote was. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to vote until I hear all the input. And I rarely, let people know what I'm going to do ahead of time. I just want to listen to all the input, all the data. I looked at all the slides. That's why I had the question for Michael on this most important issue of DSM. But I have come down and settled on the fact that I think what is in the best interest of our community is portfolio number 17. I was one of the members on the board 5 years ago that drew the line in the sand and said that we would close Drake not later than 2035. Little did I know that it could be 12 years earlier than that. I had kind of hoped for the late 2020s, but I think economics has made the decision of what's in the best interest of all of our customers, all of our constituents, all of our members of our community, whether they're within our 200 square mile city or outside of that. And so for me, this has been a much smoother sail than I thought. I think Portfolio 17 has got those elements that I think are in the best interest of our community going forward. And that's where I'm going to lay my vote. So again, I want to thank everybody that's participated in this, especially UPAC and the staff. And I look forward to the vote. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Okay, Yolanda, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So 3 years ago, when I came on the council, 3 years plus, I was hoping and praying for this. I want to completely appreciate our utility staff who worked relentless on this, along with UPAC, going through the weeds, coming up with all the portfolios, and working on what they thought was the best option, Portfolio 16. I would strongly like to acknowledge our CEO, who has taken leadership, has been bold and visionary. We just settled on 5 competencies, and in one of those competencies, we asked for innovation. We wanted to see innovation out of our leader of utilities. And wow, if this isn't innovation. So I'm going to go back to my indigenous roots, which the indigenous people here, the concept of owning property and owning water and even though the air was foreign. But the concept was about future generations and taking care. We were only stewards of the land. That was it. Taking care of our land. And through the years, we have not taken care of our land. We disturbed it, we drilled into it, we've done everything for convenience, for profit, at the expense of health and environment. Now, am I really happy going from one fossil fuel to another? Not really. I'm much more at the other end of it. That we are going to a fossil fuel and we're in transition. And I feel that this is a good compromise. It's a compromise that leads us forward. We're looking at, there is some risk, but there's risk with portfolio 16. So if our goal is here and we go to the side to build this plant for gas to maintain gas, then we're wasting like millions and millions of dollars into that. And I really appreciate Bill's comment when he said it's like the Newman scrubbers. And I thought exactly the same thing. I thought exactly the same thing. So I think this is bold, it's innovative, it's like David said, it's not about us totally, it's about those babies that are being born and what we're giving them and what people, the majority of people are asking for. So I feel so privileged and honored to be a part of this board during this historic moment. We are going to make things happen, and thank you to all and to our leadership, Aram, Benjamin, and the leadership team. It's just been amazing.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Yolanda, I appreciate that. Okay, so I will speak last and I will be brief. As Tom said, most everything has already been said, but I do want to say a couple things, mostly about staff. I think this board has asked so much of our staff in our preparation for this decision today, and staff has followed through with every answer to every question, and we asked so many more questions than we did last time that we made this decision. So I really just want to say that you prepared us well for today, and I think we are ready to make a decision because of the information that we received, and I just really wanted to congratulate you on that. That's huge. The transparency, the openness, just being so always there ready for us. So that means a lot. And I want to also speak up for UPAC one more time. They also worked so hard listening, really reaching out to the community, again, staff for that too. I heard from so many community members saying they felt heard. They had so many opportunities to voice their support or opinions, even during a pandemic. So we have, I think, done everything we can to listen to our community, our ratepayers, toward making this decision today. And I too have listened, and I have told so many groups that this is not about Drake Power Plant, that we should be thinking bigger than Drake Power Plant. But I got to tell you, when I was driving in this morning, I was just near tears, because this is a very exciting day. This is a historic day. Everyone up here at this dais and on the call has agreed that this is the fiscally wise choice for our community to close this power plant in our downtown. And how that will impact us as a reputation, as a city, economically, I don't think we can overstate. So for that one thing, in any direction we choose, Drake Power Plant is closing down no later than 23, and we know it'll likely be sooner. So thanks to this board, thank you to the staff for really helping us to understand that issue so well and communicating that to our constituencies. So, and I do support the Portfolio 17. I really do think that it provides a balance. I think it hits our pillars well, to include the environmental stewardship, resiliency with our military installations, cost and economies, and the other one, innovation, is the one I always want to hit. And so I appreciate UPAC really helping us to evolve and create those pillars that have gotten us to this really firm foundation that we have today to make this decision. So that is all I will say. Just thank you to everyone involved. And I would appreciate if we are ready, a motion from a board member. I know that several people are excited to do so. Wayne? Well,
Next motion, second.
I'd love to hear it
I
again.
will move that we adopt Portfolio 17 with thanks to UPAC and the utilities staff for their phenomenal work in helping us get to this point, and with the provision that with respect to 17, that our staff is directed to provide us with an annual update of how the different portfolios going forward line up with respect to the goals that we have set. Do we want the gas as part of this, or do you want it separate?
It'll be a separate motion.
Okay, very good.
Okay. I do have Bill on the line requesting to make the second. Is everyone okay with that?
Second.
Well, Richard sort of did. I was trying to spread the love here.
But Bill has my permission.
Oh, thank you.
We're all in this together. That's how we're all connected. Okay, with that. Oh, it's our timeline. Okay, Tony, with that, can you call roll, please?
Yes, I'll just point out that the motion is in front of us. The motion for consideration is to approve electric portfolio 17,
Okay.
and I will make the vote shown right on the screen as you speak.
Oh, thank you.
Board Member Knight,
No,
Board Member Geisinger,
Yes.
Board Member Pico,
Yeah, just to clarify that we're not actually closing the plant. We're installing Drake units 8 through 14. But no.
Board
Okay.
Member Strand,
Yes.
Board Member Murray,
Emphatically, yes.
Board Member Scorman,
More emphatically, yes.
Even more.
Board Member Avila,
I just want to keep in mind that we're displacing. We are not displacing not one worker that works at the plant. We made sure that everyone will have a job here at Public Utilities, and that's a resounding yes.
Vice Chair Williams,
Yes.
Chair Gabler.
And I, being last, can give a superlative yes.
My count is 7-2 in favor of electric portfolio 17.
Thank you. I now need a motion to approve the gas integrated resource plan and its portfolio 6 that is recommended, and there has been no controversy on that. So.
Yeah, I'd like to make that motion, Jill, for portfolio 6.
Thank you, Tom. And a second from David.
That'll work.
Okay. Tony, would you like to take roll, please?
Pointing out this motion is also on the screen. The motion for consideration to approve gas portfolio 6, Board Member Knight.
yes,
Board Member Geisinger.
Yes.
Board Member Pico.
Yes.
Board Member Strand.
Yes.
Board Member Murray.
Yes.
Board Member Scorman.
Yes.
Board Member Avila.
Yes.
Vice Chair Williams.
Yes.
Chair Gabler.
Yes.
We are unanimous on portfolio 6 for gas.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. And thanks to everyone. That concludes the agenda for our meeting today. And if there's nothing else from the board, I will adjourn.